just a brief study on the Amalekites and Esau. Part of the meaning of the name of the Amalekites is that they're a derivative from the tribe of Esau, and we will find out that the Akans tribe in West Africa, who cover a large percentage of especially Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, are actually Akans from the Akans tribe, so they're Amalekites. Okay. Now these studies are in the universities in West Africa. Most of the Akans tribes, there's about at least half a dozen of them, basically tell us that they are descendants of Esau. And from this website, Esau is the propagator of the Edomites and the elder twin brother of Jacob, the patriarch of the Israelites. Esau and Jacob were the sons of Isaac and Rebekah, the grandson of Abraham and Sarah. Esau, as a man of the field, became a hunter who had rough qualities that distinguished him from his twin brother. Jacob was a shy, simple man, depending on the translation of the Hebrew word tam, which can also mean relatively perfect man. Okay, I'll leave the links to the websites below. Basically what happened when the Europeans came to West Africa and they started to share Christianity, and they only made education available if people would actually convert to Christianity. But their basic culture, their main tribe, the Ashantis, and the Ashanti symbol is basically intertwining stools. They have what is called like a holy stool, which you have in Shintoism in Japan. But what you actually have is the Adrinka symbols, which are very heavily linked to Atlantean symbols. Now take note that of course West Africa is very close to the Atlantic, and it's said that obviously Atlantis is between the coasts of Africa and North America. It's somewhere in between there. So it's under the sea, obviously, and obviously the Bermuda Triangle is probably the place where it actually is, by which you probably have extraordinary technology hidden under the waves there. But the Adrinka symbols are used in West Africa to denote such past empires, such as the empire called Academia. Okay, and this is where we get even the European word academic. It means a learned person. Now these people had universities, these people had advanced civilizations, but I would say because of the sin that they were actually involved with, God actually wiped them out. And you can see that King David almost wiped out the Amalekites almost completely. And obviously the most noted time that the Israelites had a victory over the Amalekites was when he actually raised his hands in the battle, and it meant the Israelites were winning. And then when Moses lowered his hands, it meant the Amalekites began to win. Now I'm going to give you a strategy to actually defeat the Amalekite strategy, which may be in your culture, which may be in your very being. You may actually derive from one of these Amalekite tribes, such as the Akans, which you have many different dozens of tribes in West Africa that come under the Akans, which again go back to Esau. Okay, some of these tribes being the Ashanti and Fanti and so on. So again, I'll leave a website through this link to this website. Esau, Amalek and Haman. Yahweh said to Moses, "Write the remembrance in the book that I will surely erase the memory of Amalek from under the heavens." Exodus 17:14. Remember what Amalek did to you as you were leaving Egypt. He happened upon you and struck the weakest people trailing behind when you were exhausted, and he did not fear Yahweh. This is from Deuteronomy 25:17 and 18. Amalek is the personification of evil, claims that Yahweh does not exist and that everything happens by chance. Okay, so that is basically the Amalekite spirit. they deny the fact that Yahweh exists, even though, of course, now that there's some knowledge of God in there. Obviously, if you go to West Africa, there is knowledge of God and everything like that. But they do still practice witchcraft and paganism. It's very noted that they do that. So who was Haman? Haman was an Amalekite, which is a descendant of Agag, king of Amalek, which is in Esther 3:1. And Amalek was a descendant of Esau. Amalek tried to destroy Yahweh's people, Israel, the descendants of Jacob. In Exodus 17:8, we read how Amalek attacked Israel out of pure hatred and without a cause. Amalek lived in a distant land and was under no immediate threat. Now again, within the Akan tribes in West Africa is the Dogon tribe, which they have a very close association with the worship of the dog star, as did the Egyptians. And they're actually linked with the Dagon fish god, which of the Philistines. The Philistines were a lighter skinned race, a lighter skinned sort of North African, Middle Eastern race, which could some Europeans could be derived from the Philistines. I do think that the tribe of Dan is heavily involved in Europe as well, which you've got the Danube and everything like that. But what you've actually got is several peoples who actually fought against Israel. So this is just covering, of course, the Amalekites. I've not really seen very many studies on the Amalekites on the internet, on YouTube. So this certainly should cover the main studies here, and linking it, of course, back to West Africa, which of course takes out the much of the Black Israelite doctrine, where they say that many of the people who were in the slave ships are actually Israelites. Well, probably there's a good few of them. I'd say at least probably 50% of them would be from the Akan tribes, okay? Doesn't mean to say all black Americans now. I'm not saying all black Americans are Amalekites. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is there's mixed races within the black race as well as there is the white race. So you should really understand these things. Haman's desire to wipe out the Jewish people was an expression of Amalek's long-standing national tradition. The conflict between Esau and Jacob is much deeper than just a sibling rivalry. Amalek and Israel stand at two opposite ends of the moral and spiritual spectrum. Okay. Now, obviously, one of the characteristics of Esau that he was actually covered in a hair, and it was specifically a kind of a red hair. And yes, there are actually Africans who have a red tinge to their hair as well. That's a fact. Obviously, if you don't have that characteristic, then there's a chance that maybe you're not from Esau. Okay. Likewise with the white race. Now, not all of us have red hair all over our body or whatever it is. So that there are people with red hair, but they don't have it absolutely everywhere in their body. So that again is a distinction of what the Word of God describes. Amalek did not fear Yahweh. This is Deuteronomy 25:18. His entire philosophy was that everything happens by chance, and there is no design or providence in the world. On the other hand, Jacob and his descendants, the Jews, followed Yahweh, the Torah, morally, and believed the word has purpose and meaning, and every individual is created in the image of God. So we must recognize this. This is the essence of what Isaiah describes as being a light unto the nations. It's very important. If you do recognize you're created in the image of God, then that's good. That's more, you're leaning towards biblical doctrine, and you're saying that there truly is a God. There's hope for you. While Jacob believed that Yahweh runs the world and there is absolute standard of morality, Esau believed that life is random and morality is therefore subjective. Esau's hatred for the message of Torah actually formed the basis of all anti-Semitism. Notice Semites, that's not in particular to do with today's Jewish people, okay, but it does cover them, and it covers basically anyone really who has a biblical belief and understanding. Amalek opposed it, attacking the weakest people trailing behind, okay. We need to recognize the enemy and fight him, not because we enjoy war, because part of being a good and godly person is to actively seek to destroy evil. So how we really do that in today's age is about preaching the gospel, and then we leave the rest to God, really. It's very important that we preach the gospel within our communities. There are evil forces actively working to eliminate God consciousness from the world. See, they got this New Age Christ consciousness, which they've just sort of replaced with the Holy Spirit type of thing. You know, that's what they're doing. They're trying to replace everything that God has appointed. This is an Amalekite strategy, of course. Obviously, look at what Obama's done in the White House. I mean, it's very Amalekite-like. You know, it's exactly what the Amalekites would actually do. It's the strategy they would use. Now, to counter this evil, God says we must erase the memory of Amalek from under the heavens. How do we do it? By calling it by what it is, evil, and dealing with it bluntly as it would deal with us. You know, that's how the Amalekites deal with believers. They deal with us bluntly, like basically atheists have an Amalekite spirit in them, basically. We can gauge the extent of Amalek's encroachment in our own lives by measuring our faith in God. One of Amalek's battle tactics is to create doubt about Yahweh's presence in our lives and circumstances, and an attempt to confuse and ultimately destroy us. The Torah says Amalek battled Israel in Rephidim. Rephidim means to loosen the grip. As long as Israel was diligent to follow Yahweh, Amalek had no dominion over them. As soon as they became lax, they encountered danger. Okay, the Rephaim were again a Nephilim tribe. Okay, there was about 20 Nephilim tribes in that area at the time. Some of these Amalekites may have mixed with the Nephilim races as well. Some of them may be very large in stature. And just like if you go to certain places in Africa, certain tribes are very large. They have pagan ceremonies where they get on stilts and put on masks. This is again to do with probably their ancestors and their influence towards the Dog Star and Orion, with the Dogon. So obviously there's a lot of information on that. The Torah says Amalek battled Israel. It says when Moses raised his hand, Israel was stronger. When Moses lowered his hand, Amalek was stronger. Moses raising his hands represents raising our eyes heavenward and committing ourselves to Yahweh and his commandments. When Moses' hands were lowered, turning away from Yahweh, Amalek automatically wins. So we must be really focused upon Jesus Christ. This is the only way we are to overcome. It says in the book of Revelation, those who have actually testimony of Jesus Christ and keep his commandments, you know, they're those who overcome, you know, by the blood of the Lamb and the testimony of their mouths. So God will give us a testimony for every single battle and victory that we actually have. He'll produce a testimony in our lives, and that's designed to actually bring in new converts to the kingdom, to show that God is in control and is more powerful than the God of this world, and even the tactics that he uses, of course, which is to say that God doesn't even exist. So the way to counteract Amalek's influence in our life is simple. Focus on Yahweh and be spiritually strong. We can't afford to become lax. The battle with Amalek is conscious and in every generation. Exodus 17:16. It will not be over until the name of Amalek is blotted out entirely. So let us renew our commitment to Yahweh, study the Torah, as always, to battle evil and Amalek. And I will do the last part of the Strawman series, which should really get you to think about how many commandments are still intact, very much that we should observe them in faith through Yeshua. This is Romans 3:31. And I believe that tomorrow evening, which is Wednesday evening, the Feast of Tabernacles will be starting. So I hope you get yourselves ready for that one. If you're ever down in Stewarton or down with the 12 tribes near Bristol, I may see you. Alright, bye bye.